I did a little prepping before the session. I have a few different projects for this collab. This is the mainly sound design driven part of the project, FLP. So I'm in FL Studio for those that don't know, that didn't know. Now you know. FL for life, baby. To all you people out there that think that one DAW is better than the other, nah. It's whatever you're fastest with, whatever you're used to working with is gonna be the best for you. Obviously they all have their little pros and cons, but FL does the trick for me. The only thing I'm missing is some of the audio processing in Ableton and some of the processing from Reason. And we should make the ultimate DAW where we can incorporate all of those. Incorporate, sorry. I was like, what? How are you, Blake? What's poppin'? It's kind of odd that I can't hear my voice at all, but unless you guys tell me that it is too quiet, I'm just gonna assume that the volume of my voice is just fine, and we can get started in about right now. What's happening, my people? So, quick little preview. This might not sound, this will not sound like the final version of Armada that you are used to, because it is not. Just most of the sound design is in here. So the way I work in FL is I have my own template with drums. The blue stuff is all the synth stuff, subs. Yellow is like orchestral shit. Effects is the green stuff. But in this case I have some stuff already bust out, like these strings and impacts here. Let's get Jackson. Sorry, my bad. I just clicked through.
Have you felt it? Yeah.
Yeah, so a few of these little pitched layers were processed later on, and I have them in the synth bus, but they're not in the project, such as this guy right here. But I do have the original sound that it stems from. So, without further ado, I'm going to pull up my topic list so we can get this going. So, first thing I want to address is, where do I get my sounds from? Since I'm in FL and I'm always trying not to sound like what everybody else is sounding like, what most people are using. That's why I purposefully avoid using Serum for synthesis. So most of the time I am using Harmor, which is FL's beautiful baby right here. I've been working with this for so many years. I know the synth inside and out, and that's what I recommend for anyone that really wants to kind of hone on making their own sound, is have one versatile synth that is able to pretty much make anything from percussive sounds like little plucks to pads to lead synths to bass lines. Have a synth that you know inside and out that is able to make all of those things. That will help you really establish yourself and your sound. So what I did here to make this first drop sound, this first like drop bass, you see some of these are audio clips, but they all come from the same original synth patch that I then processed through a granulizer. And you're gonna see a lot of that, and we're gonna get to that as soon as we're getting to that in the drop. I'll explain how I made these. But basically, most of what I do inside of Harmor is I make a sound very harmonically thick by the unison here, meaning lots of voices, and then detuning them over here. The cool thing about Harmor is that you can detune the voices over the spectrum differently. So for example, the low frequencies of the different voices in the unison are going to have a different pitch offset than the high frequencies. That's what this curve is right here. So in the bottom here, we got the first octave up to this line right here. And those are all pretty much at the same pitch because I don't want the sub to be detuned much. And then over here, after the first octave, you see that it's gradually detuning more and then less again. I'm just playing with this curve until I like the character that it's generating for me. But generally, when the high frequencies are detuned more than the low frequencies, it'll give you
your music stand out, get more views, and way more engagement. Bring your music to life. Get Music Visualizer in every format, even for social media. Get started today. The link is in the description.
It'll give you this like wetter, more warbly sound. Then what else is happening? Like the main source of the character of this sound is the phaser. If I turn off the phaser, you're gonna... But you hear that wetness in the top. Also address this wave candy right here, which is FL's spectral analyzer. It sounds kind of like, yeah, wet, like juicy in the top, and that's 100% because of this harmonic unison pitch. And I personally haven't seen any other synths that can do this way, but yeah, anyway, that's why I like Harmor, because of these like specific to Harmor parameters that you can fuck with. Then these are being detuned rather, the voices are being detuned rather strongly, and then as soon as I introduce the phaser, which you can customize to such great precision, all of the holes that you're gonna see here are being carved out of the sound, making it more metallic, making it more articulative and interesting. So that's what that's kind of like my process every single time I try to design a bass line or a sound. Is I start with a big block, something very rich and full, and then I carve out of it with phasers, with filters, with anything really that removes frequencies, comb filtering, shit like that. In this case, I'm also keyboard tracking. That means that if I change the pitch, the frequency of the phaser is going to change with the pitch of my note. So if I were to keep that at the same place, well, it's going to be hard to notice now because I'm also automating the through an envelope how these width and offset buttons are interacting with the phaser. If I turn that off, also the offset one, you're going to hear a more consistent neutral tone. Like it's not evolving as the sound progresses, and that's what I was trying to do, of course. And of course, use a condom, because always use a condom. Anyway, so many cool textures that you can create just with this phaser. It's basically never ending. Additionally, I'm adding another phaser to the filter section here, which is not moving, I think, but the width of it is. So yeah, a lot of movement. So resonance here that is moving with that filter just to create more filter sweeping, like a, you know, resonance on a filter does. Makes it a bit more articulate, high frequencies and shit. And then continue. I'm not gonna drag this sound on too much longer. If you guys have any questions about any of this stuff I'm just rambling about, please stop me at any moment and ask, because it's gonna be like a endless diarrhea of me talking about Harmor. So the difference between this sound and is basically that I took the sound from Harmor, I rendered it to audio, which I recommend doing all the time if you're composing something, once you have your synths down, record them to audio so you can then manipulate the audio files in a different way. Before I start talking about the what I did to the audio file, I'm gonna actually first address what I'm processing the bassline with. So granular cuts. I just got a delay on here. It's not doing much. It's giving it a little bit of extra dimension. Maximus, which is a multi-band compressor with lots of visual referencing. It's great. I love this thing. Tons of control. An EQ to roll off the low end to prevent it from being too muddy. And then, of course, some sausage, because sausage. And sidechain, which is just dipping down the synth when the kick and snare are hitting. So pretty much nothing in terms of processing. Like, the character doesn't change at all. I'm gonna take off all of the processing. You can compare. Basically, just the low end is there when I take off the processing. The only reason is that because I wanted to have a separate sub that I'm showing you now. Yes, just so I can mix that in the final stages much more easily and much more evenly throughout the track. That way you don't have to mix the low end of each of your synths, and sometimes the low end of your synth will just be too undefined and warbly. So I highly recommend, unless you have like a lead bass that stays more or less the same throughout your whole song and the low end is very well pronounced and clean. If that is not the case, I recommend always make a separate sub for your track. And that can be very easy by simply copying the bass line and then filtering off all the top, and it basically is just going to play the exact same thing, but you can compress and EQ that low end much more easily by having it by itself. My mouth is getting dry. Not a lot of questions in here, huh? No problem. We can keep going. Then I got the screechy boy here, which comes from this audio file, which you obviously recognize from the synth that I was just playing. What I did with that is not much. Yeah, this one I didn't stretch. Usually what I'll do when I bounce something to audio is I'll mess with the time stretching to change the character of the sound to make it a bit more different, like just a variation essentially, but sticking to the same character. So what I'll do is I'll make it unique, I'll clone it, and then a lot of the time I'll play with the monophonic stretching because it makes it like grainy. Very nice. Or just like regular pitching. Nice. Other than that, both of these are being sent into a room and a hall reverb, which is, I think, being automated, the amount that I'm sending to it throughout the song. And then also you can automate the volume and filter on the reverb by itself by doing it this way. And that way also you're sticking to the same one or two reverbs throughout the whole song, which is highly recommended. You don't want your song to sound like it's in a ton of different spaces. If you restrict yourself to using 1, 2, max 3 different reverbs for your song, it's gonna feel more cohesive and consistent. So that's why I like to use sends for that. Some people just copy the same reverb over and over onto different channels. If you're freezing your reverb, that's not gonna be a problem. But if you constantly have all those plugins running all the time, it might take a serious dent into your CPU. Anyway, moving on. We got this boy right here. So what I did with this is what I mentioned earlier, the granulizer in FL. So I take the little snippet from the Harmer synth, the bass line, this guy, and then I ran that into, actually, are these ordered? No, they're not ordered. Sort by track number. Now, Where are you? It should be granular. You guys can't see. I forgot that you guys can't see my mixer. So I'm just gonna drag it on top here for a second so you actually can see what I was doing earlier. So we got the laser boy right here and the granular cuts, which is on channel 35, and I'm gonna find 35. Oh, that sounds so dope. I'm looking for my granulizer. Now that I just moved everything around by sorting it by number, I'm gonna have to take a second to find it. It should be going into the laser one, which is on 29. 20. This, here we go. 28 here and 29. These are not found. Anyway, this one should do. Currently it's going in reverse. But essentially what this granulizer does, I'm gonna clone it just so I don't lose this patch. What this granulizer does is it will roll through the sample that you're importing, and the wave spacing and grain spacing is going to determine how fast and in which direction it is going. Then the whole time it's going to hold each sample for a certain amount of milliseconds, which you can see in the top left of the screen. Probably you guys can't see it because my stupid face is there, but there's also the attack time here that you can also see the time for that. So as I play with that, so what I do while I'm playing with these parameters, so I'm gonna close my window. Goddamn airplanes! As I'm playing with these parameters, usually I'll have a Edison, which is FL Studio's recording suite. I'll have an Edison set up right behind in the recording chain, recording the signal clean, so I can go in afterwards and take out any bit from the little performance that I just did. So I'm gonna show you how I do that. Just Shift E to start a recording on input, and then play some notes. Panning. Anyway, so I play around with that until I find a bunch of interesting sounds. Then I'll cut those up and basically process them again until I have a song. Well, I don't do this every time, but that's like the best way to find like interesting sounds that you would almost not be possible to make them through a synth, because, you know, granular, yay. So that's this patch. Just a single yoit that I done repeated. Let's continue, shall we? Yeah. Oh, here I do have the neuro end phrase. Where is it? This guy, same thing. Compressing it a little bit, but it's just also the only problem when you're doing that granular trick is that sometimes the timing might be a little off, so you might want to like make some cuts and rearrange it so that it goes with the groove of your track, like that. All of these vocals also, don't be afraid to record your voice and play with it. I do it so often. This is my
Have you felt it?
Dumb voice that sounds cool now because processing. Yeah.
Have you felt it?
Not that, okay. I was gonna say not that much processing, but we're doing quite a lot here. Got a sub synth here to extend the bottom harmonic one down.
Have you felt it?
Originally, I was using R-Bass from Waves, but I don't have those plugins anymore. The bundle is too big, and I enjoyed this one a lot more. And then I got BX Stereo Maker to make it into stereo because, you know, mono recording. I highly recommend, these are the other recordings of my voice. I highly recommend the side widener from, what's the company? JST. Yeah, JST. This sounds so good. So essentially, when you want to create stereo, what you want to avoid is creating phase issues with your mono signal, and this does that so nicely. Like, it sounds great in mono, it sounds great in stereo. Beautiful. That's all you want. And then of course there's some control over how wide. The modes 2 and 3 will have more phasing issues, but they will sound wider. Mode 1 has almost no time variation. So the timing, so for example, for percussive elements, mode 1 will be better. For mode 2, vocals, you can get away with that because the timing is not as clearly noticeable. And then on mode 3, if you put that on drums, they're gonna sound awful. That's what I'm getting at.
Yup.
Yup. These are overheads, meaning the little drums at the top. These guys, I believe I used Contact, one of those drummer packs. Where is it? Dun, dun, dun. Drum kit is on channel 22. Oh, I just moved that. Usually I will use either Addictive drums or the Contact. I'll show you what we're working with. Oh, come back. We got this boy, Studio Drummer. Pretty nice. Not as nice as Addictive drums, but these sound fine to me. Anyway, so that's the overhead drums, just to give it a bit of that like live drummer feel. We're gonna quickly brush over processing on the drums just so that we don't lose too much time, because it's already 7:21 and I want to get through this track. So right now I don't have all the separate drums by themselves. I think I do have like an early version of them, but the processing is not in here because that's not this project. I'm putting only sound design in this project so that the CPU load can handle doing all the stuff that I wanted to do. So usually though, I'll have my kick and my snare going through a separate drum bus because those are the loudest elements of my drums, and I want to be able to either stack them on top if it's electro or house. You want to compress those together just so that they're not, those transients on top of each other are not putting your master like wildly into the red. And then all the other percussive elements I'm putting into a separate drum bus. On those buses, both of them, I'll have 1 or 2 compressors just to tame the transients a little bit and to compress the tails, but then I'm running it through the stressor, which is slightly saturating it. It's probably not doing anything now since we're not in that project. Oh no, we're still compressing here. Usually like I compress up to like 10 dBs on this, and then also maybe multiband or OTT earlier on that chain. You just want to get those drums thick and punchy, and make sure that none of those frequencies are clashing. If you're layering kicks and snares, you're really, a lot of the time I will make a separate kick for the kick snare, for the snare kick. So where I'm layering both kick and snare, I'll have a kick with a different EQ curve just so that the bottom of my snare can punch through clearly. This guy here. That's why it's also very useful to have a graphic spectral analyzer on your project at all time, just so you know which frequencies are being used at the moment. So in this case, my snare hits around 250, so I'll make a kick where I sculpt that frequency out a little bit, and then I'll flip the phase to make sure that this is like the way they sit together best. Always play with the phase on your drums, because those low frequencies, they can kill each other. All right. Either it's not updating on my phone or there's still no questions, which is fine by me. If you guys no, it looks like it's not updating on my phone. Strange. Just a second, please. Okay. Dun, dun, dun. That's what a granular synthesis does. That's epic. Yes, Erito, it is. Oh, Alex is calling me. Yo. Yo, what's good?
Click show more on the video. You'll see comments.
Yeah, I just found it.
Okay. Luckily, okay. So I'm gonna paste all 4 questions. Also, are you recording?
Yeah, I'm recording.
Okay, sweet. All right, thanks, man.
Cool. Ciao. Sorry about that. And we're back to it. I'm just gonna tap into the live stream so I can see the questions on my phone. Oh yeah, I gotta see. Newest. Yeah, it's that filter thing. All comments. We're 30 minutes in. Okay, so I'm gonna address a few of these other sounds that I'm layering my synths with. This boy. It's called the Howie Long Scream. You may recognize it from Star Wars. This is the TIE Fighter sound. You can find it online. It's a very old sample. A lot of people have been using it for different purposes, but the TIE Fighter is probably the most like popular use for it. I use that because it fits the story of the song. It's an armada, so there's like space battles, stuff like that. When I write a song, at least when it's a good song, I always have this story in my mind, and I have all these sounds that fit that story. That this is probably, at least personally to me, it's the easiest way to write and to compose, just so that you know what elements will fit the project and what is just like outlandishly doesn't make sense. If you know what I'm saying. I'm excited. David says, I'm excited to hear about some of your sub processing. You always have a nice mean growl in your sub. I do not do much sub processing, honestly. I just have it on a separate channel, like here, this guy. There's just an EQ. Often on the sub channel itself, I'll have maybe a supercharger, which is some light saturation and compression, Native Instruments plugin, rolling off. Sometimes I'm not even compressing it, I'm only saturating it by just doing this high pass here, and then the fattening, which is kind of like just an EQ curve that it adds to the sound. I play with this one a lot for my drums, for my plucks and percussive stuff. It's really great for that. Other than that, I will sometimes use a wave shaper. It's a lot like the trash plugin from Isotope. Basically, you have a input, output, in, out, and you can shape the wave literally. You can do it bipolar, so you have control over the bottom side of the wave and the top side. That way, when you have a different curve for the bottom as for the top, you're creating more harmonics than when you only do the top. Basically, you're creating every harmonic, and when you only every meaning like all odd and even harmonics, and when you're only applying to the top side of the it's copying the I'm not wording this right. When you have it to unipolar instead of bipolar mode, you're only creating square wave harmonics, which is only the odd ones. So all the even harmonics are not, it's not as rich of a distortion. That's all I'm getting at. So if you're wondering why this is there, that's why. So that'll add compression and harmonics to your sound. Let me show you an example. Something clean. This guy right here. All right, so let's just say you want a fat sub. Most people do. So what you're gonna do is, one, have it in a very audible range. That means that most sound systems are not that big, depending on where you're listening, obviously. But if you're listening on your phone, these bottom frequencies here are not going to be audible. Your phone is not going to play those. So you're going to want to have some overtones on your sub, or you want to make them in a separate instrument. But let's say you just want to have your sub really prominent and full, and it's not messing with any of the other layers that is in that range in the mix, just like other synths, because then you're going to want to clean those up in the other layers. So by pushing upwards, oh, it's not even going into this channel. Let me reroute that real quick. By pushing this upward, you're going to notice that I create these harmonics in the top here become more loud. I'm going to have to turn off my filter here just so I can hear all of them. By creating this clean hyperbole, I'm only adding some frequencies right above the bottom harmonic. But if I were to make hard cuts in this, you're going to notice it's going to create a lot more harmonics higher up, just becoming a lot more harsh. Also, the harder that you warp close to the zero point in the wave here, the more aggressive is, and like the more change it's going to sound. If you're sticking to the top end here, it's going to be much more subtle. So that's something I will often do with low end, just to beef it up and to add harmonics. And then after that, I'll add a Pro Q to kind of filter things out and clean it up. I have some presets here. Boost frequencies. Also now with Pro Q3, which is the fucking god of all EQs, you can do upwards and downwards compression straight in the EQ. So for example, now all things that are getting louder than this point are gonna be pushed down, but it's also like pulling it up because you're boosting it with 5.6 dB and then you're lowering it dynamically by 5 dB. It's in the left top window, you can't see it right now. So that way you have control over how dynamic that frequency is. I highly recommend this EQ. If you don't have it, you're missing out. I'm telling you, you need it in your life. So that's a pretty good tip in terms of low-end processing. It doesn't need that much more. Obviously, grouping low-end elements and making sure that they're not phasing with each other is a very important part of that. Also, low-end monitoring on it by itself is that's like super important. If you don't have a sub and you're living in a space that can't really that wouldn't benefit from putting a sub, like a poorly treated room or not treated at all, I recommend getting a sub pack instead, which is what I work with. I only have like, I think my monitors, the woofers, they don't go that low. I think they roll off around like 80 hertz. There's not, everything just dies off really quickly. So with my sub pack and with the spectral analyzer that I have here, I can tell what's going on to a pretty great, like with great accuracy. And that way I can compare to other songs, how much low end is there in other music. This is all part of the mixing and mastering stage, though. I don't try to concern myself with that earlier on in the composition and sound design steps of the process. Let's move on from that. Just gonna sweep down in the chat, see what's going on here. Sorry for the sub ramble. Bum bum bum. Let's see. Scroll down for more comments. Jesus. What's happening? Dun dun dun. All comments. This is supposed to be there. Okay. I'm still not getting like the most recent stuff on my phone. I'm gonna go out of it again and back in. Sorry about that. Come on. There we go. Now we're good. Jackson says, for non-FL users, you can get a similar free wave shaper plugin from Cable Guys. Sure. Or Isotope Trash, which is doing that same thing, but in multiband. Also, can I show you guys this? Something I really like about FL is the plugin picker. Super dope. I just go Isotope and I see all Isotope plugins. Trash. And then get rid of the mixer. So basically this is the exact same thing. There's just a ton of presets that are helping you with texturizing, and you don't have to make them all yourself, which is great. All right. Close this thing. So this sub was not going through that channel, so I'm gonna put that EQ back on my sub bus that I have going on here. Yeah, this is really big for this screen, but when this mixer is in my other screen, it's adjusted. I have a laptop underneath the screen. This off. All right, a lot of people probably wonder, how do you sound so choiry? Well, these are not, obviously a contact library. Come on, mixer, go home. This is Requiem contact library. 8Dio is the company that makes this. It is absolutely gorgeous. I recommend having at least a few different choir libraries. There's almost like infinite libraries out there these days. This allows you to pick a word, and then the chord that you play will play with that word. And then there's macros here in the bottom that are key switches, basically changing the word. That's how I do that. All right, simple. Moving on. If you have any questions about that, of course, let me know. Bum bum bum. These are some strings. One other layer that is pretty, I do it quite often, especially in collabs. I have this opera sample pack that I go back to frequently, just with little voices like this. And what I will do is I will cut up those audio files, making my own little phrase, transposing parts of the voice so that it fits the key that I'm working in. So I had this little vocal thing here. You might notice the cuts when it's playing by itself, but when everything is playing and there's a sidechain and everything, these cuts are inaudible. Alright, on to the breakdown section and the riser. So the way that I did the speed up thing is it's so simple but kind of unconventional. So I took one of the I created a stab with a kick and I layered everything on top of each other. Basically these are the layers. There's a kick here somewhere too, there. So what I did is I recorded that, and then, where is it?
Make your music stand out, get more views, and way more engagement. Bring your music to life. Get Music Visualizer. In every format, even for social media. Get started today. The link is in the description.
Where are you? Oh, here we go. Come on. Sorry, this is linked. And what I did then is I opened another Edison below and basically shortened the recording. It's looped now. And I did it manually. And then while I'm doing this, I'm recording this into another Edison. Basically right here. And then I imported this strange sauce into the project, applied some effects, applied some filters, layered it with other riser sounds, including this transformery boy right here. Which is, you guessed it, Harmer. Where are you? There we go. Very simple. Layering, obviously, key part of making a track sound interesting. There's some thunder in there. Some other background risers. And then Chris Kelly says, I would have never guessed Edison could be used like that. Genius move. There's a lot more you can do with Edison that you probably hadn't considered. A lot of times I will make little turntable scratches with it by importing a vocal. Let me show you a little example of that. Vocals, where's that? Here we go. Stop playing. Jesus.
Music is our religion.
Oh yeah, I do those BTSM little set vocals as well from time to time.
Music is our religion.
And then basically, as you're playing through something, you have this scrub wheel here. So I just play around with that wheel and have it recording into a different Edison, and then export the parts that I like.
Check.
Check in. Heck yeah. So yeah, another thing you can do with Edison. Tons of tools in here, by the way, if you want to explore those. Edison is beautiful. Highly recommend it. I think that pretty much covers most of the elements inside of Armada. Like, these are always those two synths that I already showed you guys. Granular. There's a few of them missing here, but they're the same synth. Oh. A lot of times I will also cut up my choirs and strings and then layer them to the rhythm of the song. Create little risers out of them, fillers and stuff as well. As for the drums, I just also use like, yeah, I make them sound good and then I'll cut them up. Trying to create a lot more interesting drum groove. For example, this like all that good stuff. All right, I think it is time. Alex says, few questions from above. Do you do image resynthesis, putting an actual image and to make a bass? In Harmor, you're probably talking about Harmor. Yes, I do that from time to time. I mean, the result is pretty random, but for creative uses, like starting an idea, that can be really useful. You're gonna end up with very weird stuff. So if you were not aware, Harmor, where are you? Boop. Harmor is granular, additive, and subtractive, so you can plug in an audio file in here in the image resynthesis, but you can also actually drop a picture in there. I don't think I have any pictures chilling in my sample library, but it'll try to basically the top part of the square, it will process them as high frequencies, the bottom low frequencies. The brighter it is, the louder it is. So you're gonna it's gonna be a harmonic weird mess, but sometimes cool. For example, you can make a picture with your name and it'll be spelled out in the spectral analyzer, because that's what it does. I've seen a few producers do that as like a little Easter egg at the end of a song, for example, or like pre-drop stuff. I think it is time to move on to Daniel Dom asks, where do you get those samples, choir stabs? Contact libraries. Most of them, yeah, all of my choirs are basically Contact libraries. I'm gonna move on to Black Magic. Save changes, nah. All right, I'm gonna answer some questions while we do this. Oh, that's how Sultan does that. I imagine, yes. Most people, choirs, strings, all those like acoustic instruments, I'm not saying all of them, but very often there will be Contact libraries. There's a few other instruments that can do that, such as what's it called? Oh my god, my brain right now. I was just talking about it yesterday. There's this massive rompler, it's like 100 of gigs of sounds. It's also granular. First person in the chat to tell me gets a high five. Damn it, I don't have it anymore, so I can't look it up. Anyway, there's a few different like of these romplers that will just use libraries. FL just got their own of those. It's called Flex. I'll show you guys what that sounds like. Basically, what it does is it uses recordings and then blends it with synths. It's a bit like Nexus also, but Nexus specializes in synthesizers, like synth sounds. Alex says, also while we're waiting, can you go a little bit into the approach, in how to approach labels like Cannibalen? Okay, I noticed that you guys have been asking this question a lot. So basically, you don't want to spam your music around, especially when you feel like your music is not as qualitative as the other music that's out there. You want to first really focus on being happy with your productions, making sure that this is the best work that you can put out right now. And then you want to make a small compilation of that. I would say ideally a demo is between 1 to 5 songs max, like ideally 3. Something cohesive, music that fits together. And then you want to just reach out, don't spam, but reach out through promo emails for labels. Just reach out, try and get a response. I know it can be frustrating because most of the labels that you're going to reach out to will not give you a reply. We try to open and reply to as many people as we can, but since of the outrageous volume of demos that we get, it's pretty much impossible to reply to everybody. We'll reply to music that we think is good and interesting, and we'll give some constructive feedback, but don't get hung up because people are not replying or because they don't like it. A lot of people are not gonna like it. It's normal. No, but not everybody's gonna like your music. Sorry, I'm gonna have a problem with my phone here. Use cellular data. All right. So yeah, make a clean, well-organized demo email and send that around. Don't CC well, maybe you can do blind CCs, but don't like spam it around and make it unpersonal. Like, you want to make it as personal as you can, brief, and eventually if a label likes your music, they will remember and they will get in touch with you. I see a lot of labels like us that are constantly looking around for new music, and I mean, we will find you if your music is good. Don't think because you're not spamming that you're not doing it right. You shouldn't be focusing on trying to reach everybody with a song you made. You should be just showing it to your friends, showing it to your peers, and if the music is good, it will find its way to a label. Most of the time. All right. Bum, 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 bum. Isaac asks, if you don't know what labelradar.com is, check it out, y'all. It's a really good way to get your music to labels, and it's free. Platforms like that are definitely useful as well. But yeah, send your music to your friends, have them play it, try and get as much people to hear it, but don't spam it, because once you start spamming people, a lot of doors are going to start closing, and you don't want to get a bad first impression. Be respectful, be humble, be the best producer you can be. All right, we're here. Sam Lamar, Lektrique, Black Magic. A lot of the similar techniques are used to make this, you'll notice, but this is the full project. Everything is in here. Let's have a quick little playthrough of the intro. All right, let's dig into it. So you'll notice a lot of orchestral sounds, tons of little layers, these drums. These, I think, are from a Contact library called Action Strikes. It's just little suites in which you can program your percussion, like very cinematic percussion, in a way that doesn't sound like you're using only one or two samples, but it sounds like it's constantly evolving and changing. So you want that. Other than that, Sam and I, we started this track by playing around with my C-board. This little thing here. So if you don't know C-board, not important. My point is, when you're starting a song and you want something to sound different, original, fresh from all the rest, I highly recommend starting with something that not everybody has or has played with. So what the C-board does is it offers extreme expressiveness with your instruments that you're playing. There's a wide range of instruments that you can play with this thing, but you will play it in such a way where you can do vibrato, you can do aftertouch, you can do like modulation by sliding your fingers up and down the keyboard, and this gave us the initial idea, which was, I think, these horns right here. Yeah. And then these guys, choir. No, that's choir. Yeah, anyway, so we started with a really simple idea, just like C sharp, D sharp to D. And that was like our theme, our hook. And then we started building around that, just throwing more instruments at it, trying some strings. And then building and building until it just sounds so big, because of these synth layers as well that we added later on. That's a little Sam Lamar synth. Just like a super distorted saw bass, some white noise to fill up the top, and then together Alright, so as I was saying, all of these orchestral layers and Rolly C-board to create the idea. So start with something that you haven't played with before to start a new idea. That way the concept is always going to be something fresh and different. Not much processing happening here. Nothing interesting other than simple distortion and compression. Let's move on towards the drop. Lots of layering going on here. You'll see we have this bass stab, which is the rave stab, which is basically the main drop sound here. In this case, I try to be a fancy boy, so I threw on this Culture Vulture, which is a analog emulation of the real hardware rack. Sounds very similar though. UAD plugin. Just a little bit crunchy distortion, but warmer than most plugins. Some EQ to clean up the low end. And some OTT. Barely though. And some sausage, because always good to place a limiter at the end of your chain. This is layered with basically a higher version of that same synth, but this one is already bounced to audio. and there's some other layers within that. This guy, bottom, that's all of the low end for the stab. You'll notice that none of the other layers share these bottom frequencies because you want to keep the sub clean. A little stabby boy for increased attack. And then a little laser together. Only the synths. A lot of these filler sounds are actually granulized as well. Yeah, I think I threw that in the granulizer as well. This guy. Yeah, these ones. These are all little chopped up audio samples that I took out of my granulizer, which is here. I think I can still find the actual. I wrote it down. Where channel 35. This has been a while, you know. That's the rave stab. Not too hard to create. Just a harmonizer and a little bit of detune here. Some voices. Harmonizer is basically going to make it sound like it's a chord. And then the actual, the bottom is also being detuned here. Not much processing. Another culture vulture. This is absolutely not necessary. I don't know. I was probably playing with it because it was brand new at the time. But you can do that with most other distortion units. Just gonna sound a little different. But not an essential part of this sound by any means. Some OTT and a sausage fattener. Pretty much the same thing as on most of these channels, really. I hope that the stream is working better now again for you guys. Let me know if there's more problems. Okay. If there's anything here you guys want to see the process of how I made it specifically, please let me know. I'm still looking for the granular layer here. It must be chilling around here somewhere. I thought it was channel 35. Oh no, that's the original rave stab, right? So I took the original rave stab and then I put that into channel 28, which has the granulizer. So that's the full stab rendered out to audio, and then right here so then I rendered these out as well. Of course, I made a recording of that. And then I cut those up and rearranged them into the drop. They're mostly to be found here. You'll notice that in this case, the sub is actually part of the same layer. There's no separate sub because the way that the granulizer is going to play with the sound is going to change the phase of the sub of the low end in each of these like separate little cuts. So if I were to layer it with an actual sub by myself, it's never going to sound the same way as it does coming out of that granulizer. So in order to make it to make it sit well in the mix, I am putting, it looks like I played with some panning effects here. DDLY, cool little, cool little delay unit from Isotope. In EQ, a lot of boost in here. Yeah, filling out the low mids, removing some of the highs, putting it in some space. If you haven't messed with Pro R yet, highly recommend. A lot of fun. But currently it's at 0, so it's not being used right now. It's actually being sent into this room reverb here at the end of the mixer. And then some OTT and another supercharger. So you can tell there's a lot of different stages of compression, and that's key with compression. Same thing when you're mastering a song. You don't want to throw everything into a single limiter and then try to achieve your loudness through that. You want to do it in several different steps, because the more steps you take, the cleaner the compression result will be. Some background reverb layers just to make sure that everything is not up front, so there's some depth in the song. You really want to distinguish elements from each other by placing it into a different space. So this is a little background layer that I'm also using to connect the different parts of the track. I think it's this riser stab here. So I'm keeping it rather wet, so it's not fucking with everything that's up front. Doop, 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 doop. So I'm keeping this, I think I'm keeping it wet inside of the synth, because I was looking on the processing and I don't see any reverb plugins. Yeah, here. So Harmer has its own reverb unit, like most decent synths do. Automating these parameters in order to get the desired effect of just making a little riser out of that. Basically, it's also being tied in with these guys that are connecting the different parts. Oh. Solo. There's a bunch of these here. Now, a few different things that I haven't addressed yet is some of these samples. A bunch of these screams and other strange noise, like vocal samples, are samples out of movies. I think we took some stuff out of Evil Dead for this. Some of them are from sample packs, and then there's the infamous Black Magic. I believe the Black Magic sample is from Castlevania, little Netflix series. So I just took that little sample. I think the full thing is here, but because it's so short and I fuck with it, you can't really. Nobody's been able to point it out.
You are a fiction that justified the practice of black magic.
And then we got the little scream. I think that's from a sample pack, just to connect into the drop. These vocal choirs are, most of them also that same Contact library, Requiem, just cut up and processed to sit well in the mix. So I always like to look for like sounds that haven't been used too much, especially like outside of sound design as well, such as the cimbalom, this boy. Obviously it needs to fit with the song that you're working on. This was perfect. Over time I've built a pretty big Kontakt library with just tons of different instruments, classic stuff like horns and strings, but also very weird stuff. Always be on the hunt for fresh sounds, and once you find something, put it in a folder. Like, you might not always find specific sounds for the song that you're working on while you're working on them, so it's interesting to build these folders of sounds that fit together, that have like a certain vibe, so that then later when you're in a song within a certain mood, like a certain energy, you could go in those folders and find tons of fun sounds that will help give your song identity. So we got through most of the drop patches. This is Sam Lamar's bass, which is pretty much just like a phased, really distorted saw bass. Yoy. With a, yeah, that's pretty much what it is. Distortion, compression, EQ, and a phaser. Oh yeah, I was showing you guys how I made these Rave Stab granulized versions. Do I still have it here? Yeah, Edison. So this guy. So I took the original Rave Stab, ran it through the granulizer, recorded these guys out, and then cut them up and rearranged them to make the rhythm. Oh, and I was showing this synth, which is one of the Rave Stab layers that I turned into a riser to connect or to transition to the next part of the song. Where is it? Oh, here. And then on top of that, I layered this vocal. Where are you? Hello, vocal boy. Where are you? On the top here, maybe? Yeah, here, this guy. With pitch automation. So reusing the elements that you already have in the song, but applying pitch automation and filters and other effects just to give them a different space or to help tie the song to the next part, very useful. Just so you don't have to look for different elements for everything. And it'll just make it more like as a cohesive whole. Another way to reuse sounds is through granulizing them or throwing them into a granular synthesis or stretching them with different stretching algorithms. All things that will help you reutilize the same sounds but build variations and will give you new ideas, basically. For the strings, we used the string library. Where is it? This is the cimbalom. Cine drums. Where is? I don't know if I have it open. Oh, this is Albion. Let me just grab my keyboard here. I used the action strings, actually, this guy, to make the, like, the bendy strings section here. Action strings is really good for, like, staccato and spiccato sections. a lot of the time you'll have to cut it up and process it so that it doesn't feel like it's the library. Like you'll have to make it bring it to life basically, because it sounds a little raw straight out of the library. So cutting it up and playing with time effects like reverb and delay will really help with that. Okay, Bojan asks, what are those offbeat synths in between the main synth? Are you talking about during the drop? Let's see. Oh. Probably this guy. Yeah, I just cut up this earlier patch. Which is it? One of these layers here. Little bass stabs. I think these are Sam's patches. Or is it mine? Oh, yeah, maybe it's both. Like layered. Yeah, it's actually this guy, the plucky boy. Again, Harmer. Duh. But it looks like he added a little sub layer underneath. Could be this bass pluck. Just to give it some like offbeat rhythm. And then just cut them up, move them around. Don't be afraid to go a little off grid, because the more you go off grid, the more you'll have swing and human feel to it.
Let's go.
Again, I place those pretty much all manually.
Let's go.
I have this little laser on top, and then I layered it with the same bottom, just to add percussive stabbiness to it.
Let's go.
Oh yeah, I think while the stream was down, I mentioned where I got these vocals. So, this here.
Black magic.
That's from Castlevania. And then these other Scream stuff. I think some of this is from Evil Dead. Just like tiny little snippets.
Let's go.
Also Evil Dead.
Come get some.
Also Evil Dead. Just play with them, distort them, stretch them, make sure that it doesn't sound exactly like the original thing, and then I think you're in the clear for those like little vocals.
Black. Let's go.
Again, all these sounds are basically the same granulized rave stab. So I layered everything together, threw it into the granulizer, and then played with the timing, cut them up, played a lot with the time effects in between here so that there's enough delay and reverb, but it's not muddying it up by like automating the mix here. That's the Pro R, which is FabFilter's reverb plugin. It's delicious. Here I played with the pitch a little bit at the beginning, so the same stabs, but added a little pitch up right at the beginning just to change the feel of how they come in. Whoop, whoop, whoop. I notice Space Laces does that a lot. Just like making variations of the same sounds by playing with the pitch and the stretch. Where did I get this from? So this has the choir already layered in. And I think this is because when Sam and I were working on the track, we did do a lot of stemming out back and forth, and we ended up with a bunch of stems that were grouped, but that can also lead you to new ideas. It's like things you didn't even consider by being limited to like having certain layers already in the elements that you want to use. Obviously nothing that's gonna mess with its quality. Yeah, more stretched out stuff. I can tell by the graininess. Again, here in NFL, every audio file in Ableton you get the same stuff, but the algorithms sound slightly different. So definitely play with that. Bounce all your synths to audio. I can't say that enough. And then play with cutting them up and stretching them and doing different processing on them, just to give you more variation. All right, let me know if you guys have any other questions about this song. I made a list of stuff to get through. Let me see if there's anything else. Oh, creative noise. So I know there's a lot of people using the same white noise samples to put over your drops. This is a really fun technique to create white noise that always sounds a little bit different. I think it's on channel 96 here in my mixer. So what I did, where did I even use it? On the first drop. Alright, trying to find it in the song. Here we go. Noise hit. Yeah, so this guy, and then if I go down to 96, I should have the, yeah, this guy. So this is a sine wave that's being pushed. So noise generator plus a very low frequency sine wave that are being compressed together, like aggressively. If I take off the compression, you'll notice I took off the filters too. So basically I'm compressing together a sine wave, a very low frequency sine wave, and white noise or pink noise, just enough in the top. And then I'm filtering out, I'm compressing them together first, and then I'm filtering out the low end, giving you this like rattling kind of.
Make your music stand out, get more views, and way more engagement. Bring your music to life. Get Music Visualizer in every format, even for social media. Get started today. The link is in the description.
That's by playing more than one note together. Like if you play notes that are close to each other at the same time, you'll get this like back and forth rattling. Really cool for like different grooves as well. So I'll play with filters on that and just like mess around until it sounds like something very wide, but also just for filling up the top of the spectrum and not being like a plain old white noise impact that everybody always puts. I put them often as well, but it's all about layering in that case. Let me turn off everything except for the effects section. Oh, still got sub. Yeah, lots of sounds to connect different parts of, like to connect to different impacts, to connect to different parts of the composition. So always tons of sweeps and risers and stuff. love that layer. Milk White Rise. Good stuff. I think this is from Contact Library. It might actually be the Requiem one that I was showing earlier. There's a effects version of it where it's only just like pitch falls, pitch ups, shouts, stuff like that. Very interesting for processing and just like placing in the back. A riser. Let's see what this is. Yeah, if you can, I mean, you fucking can, but try and always make your risers custom, just so that they're taking on the right pitch and pitching up at the right speed, and you're just gonna add so much identity to your song. Phasers and pitch and chorus and saturation, that's pretty much the whole thing here. Some prism for more detune to make it sound a little wonkier. Let's see, what else can we discuss about this track? Bum, bum, bum. This most of the stuff that I prepared to talk about. Let's go to the questions. How is your mixing setup? What do you keep in a bus? What is your thought process when it comes to your master channel and mixing? So this project was, I believe, my mix and master as well. I don't always do that. I try to keep them in separate projects as much as I can, because tons of processing will be required during the mixing and mastering process. Obviously that depends on how much you've processed everything before that, but currently I have it laid out like this. All my drums go into my drum bus. Now what I do, like I mentioned in the previous project, I will put my kick and my snare into another bus, because sometimes the compression that I apply to my kick and snare is so big that all the other elements like hats and stuff, they don't need that much compression. You just don't, like, I rather compress them by themselves a little harder than smash them all together. They need a little more breathing room than my kick and my snare do. Those are basically getting smashed together. In this case, most of my drums were already processed. When you look at these exports here, the drums, these are already highly compressed files. So what I would do generally, if this was not what I was using, if I was using the simple like kick and snare separate, I'd have definitely an EQ on my kick. In this case, certainly Pro Q3, because you can apply upwards compression, downwards compression. If you just want to have a lot of thump, but you don't want the impact to be out of control, you can do this. Basically just rising it, but suppressing the transient bass, the thump, essentially, and bringing up the tail end of the kick. It's beautiful for that. That applies to all other parts of the spectrum as well. If you want to reduce your attack, like the top of the attack of your kick, just do downwards compression on the top end. It's still gonna, like, you're still gonna have the tail there, but the initial attack is gonna be so much lower. I notice a lot of people are putting way too much high frequencies on their kick on the top. Like, you don't need that much. Obviously it depends on the style of the song and what the sample sounds like, but I like to keep everything above 10K for my different instruments. For my hats, I mean different percussive instruments. I do the same thing with my synths. I'll roll off a lot of the stuff in the top just to give space to my overheads from my drums, just so that they don't get lost in all those harmonics from all those synthesizers that are drowning them out. So in the end, mixing and mastering is all about contrast. you want to give all of your elements their own place in the virtual mixing environment. So that means frequencies. Where is my spectral analyzer? That's going to help explain this a lot better. Oh, it's over here. So in terms of frequency, you don't want to have more than one element occupying the same frequencies at the same time. That's why sidechaining is a thing, so that when your kick and snare hit, all other bassy, low-mid elements get out of the way so that those can play by themselves. And then that kind of, you can apply that to reverb as well. So you don't want to have everything dry. You want to have the most important elements, such as your lead bass line, your lead synth, your vocal. You want to have that rather in front and narrow, like mono present, is what I mean by that. And then other elements like pads and reverb layers for those elements potentially, or other elements with more reverb. You want to have those more wet in the back so that they don't clash while they're playing together. Your brain is able to distinguish two elements if they're playing at the same time, but one is very reverby and the other is very dry, even if they're using most of the same frequencies. I don't recommend doing this with low end content, low end frequencies, because those will still phase each other out, and you don't want to have reverb on your very low frequency stuff anyway, because it'll just sound like a rumbly mess. So a lot of the time, my reverb sends, they will be rolling off the bottom, like here, just so there's not too much low frequencies bleeding into the next sound. You want to have all that cleaned up. Most people I see also bounce that out to audio and then clean up those reverb layers in the audio file as well, just so that there's no bleeding into each other. But I kind of like the rawness that it gives. It's not like 100% super duper clean. It still feels a bit more natural, like cinematic and humane, not robot noises. So other than that, I have my bus for my kick and snare. I have my bus for my drums, bus for synths, bus for, I call it cinema bus, but it's basically all my orchestral stuff, horns, choirs, strings, stuff like that. A bus for sub separately. All of these buses can be compressed separately. That depends if that is required, because usually my sub and my synths, I'll have them all processed by themselves so that they don't need much on the bus itself. However, my drums, I will definitely be compressing them in the bus. Vocals, again, depends on what I'm working with. Effects, usually they don't have much on them other than maybe something to clean up the low end. I'm just removing the stereo content here below 100 hertz from my effects. Sometimes you don't want that, but a lot of the time for effects and for any element, you're not gonna want any side stereo information below 100, 150, sometimes 200 hertz, depending on the key that you're working on and depending on the style of music. On my master, we have Ozone Imager. This is an old project. I'm using Ozone 8 now, but usually I'm gonna use just the full suite these days. I'm gonna use the full suite. I'm gonna use the Master Assistant just for suggestions regarding frequencies that are clashing when they're hitting the limiter. So basically I'll play the track, or at least the loudest parts of the track, the drop for example. Let's do it.
Black magic.
Let's go. Come get some.
All right. Oh, now what this tells me is where are the problem frequencies. It tells me maybe you can have a little bit more low end. Barely. It's adding like 0.3 dB at 75 hertz. Now I'm gonna, most of the time I'm gonna undo these changes and address them myself inside of a Pro Q. There I can dial in the amount that I want. Specifically, I can make it dynamic by applying downwards or upwards compression. Usually, if I don't need more punch, I'm going to apply downwards compression. If I need my kick to hit a little harder at 100 hertz, I might add a little upwards. These are things that you can do these days with Pro Q on the master. Also, linear phase. Very important, because if you're using non-linear phase on your master and you're adding this plugin after mixing down your whole song, the phase issues are thoroughly gonna fuck with your low end. Now, if you have this, if you have a multi-band plugin set up such as Maximus that is not linear, but you have it there the whole time and you don't change the crossover frequencies, you're gonna mix it down to sound good with that plugin on. If you are the one mastering your track, that is fine. But if you're not, and you take off that non-linear multiband compressor, you're really gonna end up with a different sounding track than with it on. The phase problems are basically gonna be doing things like this. For example, I have a very hard high pass here. Now you might think this is all you're doing, but in theory, when you're not using linear phase, you're also pushing or cutting certain frequencies here that is going to affect how your drums, how your bass elements are sitting together. The steeper the curve, the higher the artifacts. So the more dramatic the difference is going to be. It's just something to consider while you're applying plugins to your master chain. So while in Pro Q and you have the CPU, definitely linear phase every day. Also this, when you're in linear phase and you're like processing this in real time, it's going to take a lot of your CPU. That's why you want to do your mixing and mastering in a different project. If you need to. Obviously, if your computer is a beast and you can handle it, no problem, do it all. Then a lot of times I'm going to be using a visible limiter at the end of the chain, and then a little Pro L, mainly just for monitoring. Like, I'm not doing anything with Pro L other than just checking how loud it is, because I love this little line.
Black magic.
And then SonarWorks, that is currently not being used. SonarWorks is a calibration plugin for basically you do a frequency sweep, and is going to apply a correctional curve on your master just so that it sounds flat. It's going to take out the coloration of your room and speakers just so that you have the flattest possible result in your coming through your speakers. You can also load up specific headphone correctional curves, such as currently I'm working with my Bayer Dynamic DT990. I think it's the 880 Pro. So for example, I'll load up the 880 Pro. This guy, I think, what's the difference? Should be the same thing. So this is basically the curve that is the color of these headphones. By turning that on, it's going to remove this. It's going to boost, like cut these frequencies. It's going to boost these frequencies just so that we end up with a almost flat curve. That way, you're literally listening to what's inside the DAW, taking away all the lies. Let's see. No new questions since Nick. So we're a little bit over time already. If you guys have any final questions, I will address those. If not, we're gonna call it a day. Let me know. One final thing before I stop talking about mastering is you don't always need to be using all these plugins. I only use certain plugins when I notice that that's what the song needs. Comparing your music to songs in the same genre and like something you want it to sound like is very important. Always have a song in your project that you can reference, that you can A/B to. You want to have similar loudness. You want to have similar amount of low end. You want to have similar amount of punchiness. That is all. Yeah, it'll help you a lot figuring out exactly like what the song is missing, whether or not your song has too much bass, is muddy in the low end, things like that. If you're in FL, definitely use Wave Candy for monitoring. It's so fucking useful. Christian, how long does it take you to start and finish a track? That is highly dependent on the song. In an ideal scenario, you want to finish a song as quick as possible. That being said, the composition phase of the song. So that's why actually I'm separating different phases of songwriting so I can focus on finishing a song faster. Because if you're writing a song and you're constantly distracted with EQing and compressing stuff, you're taking yourself out of this like focus where you're coming up with ideas that is helping you write the song. And the broadcast is interrupted again. So let me just finish on that thought. Whenever you're writing a song, you want to separate the sound design, composition, mixing, and mastering steps. Finish writing your song. For some people, they start with a sound design session just to like have sounds to work with. Other people just start writing right away, going back to a folder of previous sound design stuff, or just like your own preset library. But you want to have as few distractions as possible while writing a new song. So ideally, writing the full concept and the full structure of a song within a day is like what you want. Keep that time as short as possible. That way, the flow and like the way the song grows and the elements that are there are gonna make the most sense and are gonna I notice people connect with it a lot better when a song is written quicker. Then once all of that is down, I can take up to 3 months working out all the details, working out like exactly all the sound design. It all depends, of course, on my schedule and what I have to be working on. But I'd say, yeah, in an ideal scenario, I finish a song in a week, easily. If I can focus on it and if I don't have any other stuff to do. That's why, again, it's key that your workflow isn't as distractive, is not distractive as possible. So avoid having to dig and look for things, having to like loop a certain section too many times. You want to cut that as much as possible and just focus on getting it out of your mind onto your computer. All right, final questions. Thank you, River Orion. It was a pleasure. I hope you guys enjoyed me talking and showing you how I make my music. I hope it was very educational for you guys, that you learned something that is going to help you create yourself. If you have any other questions, don't hesitate to reach me on my Facebook or Instagram. I'm mostly on Instagram these days. Thanks for having me, DFire, It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed doing this, and let's do it again sometime. All right, I'm logging off. Cheers, guys. Hope you guys are safe. Stay inside. I love you. Bye.